From the heartland of America, focused on God, family, and country, the mouthpiece of the Midwest. This is Dale Carter's America.
All right, we're back in the friendly confines of the podcast studio. I am Dale Carter. He is Kurt Wheeler. We record this on a Red Monday. The Chiefs are playing tonight against the New Orleans Saints, and not knowing how that game is going to go and knowing this won't post until Wednesday, I am wearing red today, but I'm sporting the red of the University of Southern Indiana Screaming Eagles.
Nice.
My alma mater.
I always forget about like Red Friday, Red Monday, whatever, so I'm not wearing red. I always forget.
Well, I mean, you're fairly new to this town. I mean, I've lived here almost 30 years.
Yeah. And I haven't lived here 30 years.
And I do work for the Chiefs, right? Yeah. 16 years as the stadium voice of the Chiefs, so I do kind of get
not to brag
what's going on there. Brag? That's not a brag. That just means it's a busy day today. This is actually officially, as we record this, a vacation day for me.
Yes.
So I had to come in to put out like 3 fires already, and then you and I were scheduled to record the podcast. So as soon as we get done here, then I'm going to go home, quick lunch, and then to an 8-hour day at Arrowhead Stadium. Yep. And hopefully a big victory tonight. Then I'm off on Tuesday. So that is kind of like my schedule. But I wanted to mention this first. And speaking of red, let's go ahead and welcome in Bob Watson, our State Farm agent. Red is the color for State Farm. Auto, home, life, commercial insurance, anything you can insure, Bob Watson is the guy who can get it done for you. Bundle your home and car insurance and save even more money. 7th and Main in Blue Springs. You can reach him and his crew there at 816-229-7878. My personal insurance agent, but I'll gladly share him with you. And then we ask you to save the date. October 29th is coming up. That is our podcast listener appreciation party, and it is going to be at Funhouse Pizza, the Lee's Summit location. Jim Dingman, he's always got something going on, and it's always fun, and the pizza is fantastic. And this time, when you come to the live podcast on October 29th, we're buying the pizza. So tell your friends. We're not going to announce this on the radio. We don't want to line all the way out to 50 Highway. But those of you who are interested in the podcast and want to hear from our special guests who we're still confirming, we would love to have you there for the podcast. And again, we're picking up the tab on the pizza. 5 o'clock social hour. 6 o'clock we'll actually record like we normally do. And that is coming up on October the 29th, which will be 1 month away from the election. So we got a lot of stuff that we need to get to today. And Kurt is going to tell you all the ways you can get this podcast, make sure it's automatic for you, and how you can spread the word so that we can spread the growth of Dale Carter's America.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. Make sure you check us out on video. You can do that on YouTube or Rumble. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, leave a comment. It all helps with the algorithm and helps get us in front of new eyeballs. And you can just share it the old-fashioned way, too, either on your social media pages or text it to your friends or tell your friends. All of it helps, and we appreciate all of it. Audio podcasts you can get on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. And then, of course, make sure to follow us on Facebook as well and join in the conversation. Hop in the comments. Whether you're a lover or a hater, we love to see it.
Oh, yeah. Hate listening we really love, especially you keyboard warriors who love to fight on Facebook. And I got something for one of you later on in the podcast. Interesting to go back to my hometown, though, and catch up with some old friends. I had dinner with a guy named Brett DeVault. He said, please mention my name at the start of the podcast. It'll make me famous. Brett already is famous. He was an all-state quarterback at Mater Dei High School, went on to the Indiana University, and became a tight end at IU, and actually played in the Holiday Bowl win over BYU. And there was another guy in that game playing offensive line for BYU. His name is Andy Reid.
Nice.
So, a little famous on his own part there. So we mentioned your name there, Brett. Brett and I did high school football together in Indiana for years on the radio, and he's just a fantastic guy. And he starts out with, do you really think she's going to win? Tell me that's not going to happen. And it's interesting when you talk to real people, like my parents and other family that I saw, other friends that I saw, they just are incredulous that it's even a possibility that she could win, yet the election's tight.
Yep.
So we'll see how it turns out. I saw my aunt and uncle from Pittsburgh. Actually, they live in Jeannette, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Pittsburgh. And I haven't seen them. My aunt is my dad's youngest sister. She's 85. And I have not seen them in 34 years, we figured up, since another family member died. That's the last time I saw them. And I know that her two sons, my cousins, my first cousins, one of them is gay and married to a man, and the other one is a teacher. And they're both liberal as the day is long. So I didn't know where my aunt and uncle stood on politics. We've never talked about it. So my aunt says, should we talk about politics? And I said, I don't know. Should we? And she says, well, I'm a lifelong Republican, and I can't imagine that woman is going to win. And it's interesting. We'll get to the kicker at the end, which we'll talk about strippers, which has nothing to do with my 85-year-old aunt. But
That's good.
Yeah, exactly. She said, over the course of my life, I have voted for candidates I did not like. I'm not going to sit down and have breakfast with them like I'm sitting down with you. It's about the policies. And I'm like, this is my 85-year-old aunt.
Yeah.
This has got to be my DNA coming through, right?
100%.
Because we talk about that all the time on the podcast. It's not about, oh, man, it's cool. She's a woman of color, man. This is going to be great. And that Trump, oh, he's an asshole. I don't like him at all. It's about the policies, and that's what we talk about. In fact, we got a whole section coming up on that a little bit later on. But first, let's tell you about where you should take your car if it's in a wreck. To come in and do this podcast this morning, I actually had to drive in bumper-to-bumper morning rush hour traffic. As a morning guy, I'm not used to that. I'm used to getting in my car at 2:20 when I leave my house, and I'm here by 2:45. Boom. It's like clockwork every morning. Not so much today. Do you drive in that all the time?
Sort of. I take like the back way through the plaza and all that stuff because I live in Raytown. So it's pretty consistent, but I avoid the highway during rush hour.
Well, I couldn't do that today. So I got here a little later than I wanted to this morning, but we got the fires put out and we're doing the podcast. I was not a statistic. There were the scout sign said there's a big wreck up ahead, blah, 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 blah. And if that's you, and if you wreck your car and they say, hey, where are we taking this thing? You only need one name. And if you listen or watch this podcast, you know that name. That name is Dale. Dale Reynolds in Blue Springs, the one and only original Dale's Collision Repair Shop. Been around since 1987, putting cars back together, and I have a little firsthand experience here. Whether it's me or my kids cracking up a car, it always goes to Dale's, and it always comes out showroom new. Okay, they've been around 37 years, and there's a reason for that. And we say Dale's Body Shop in Blue Springs, but it serves the entire metro area. I mean, he told me once that they do collision repair for police cars on the Kansas side. And you can bet they bang those things up quite a bit. So if you get in a wreck, that's all you need to know. It's on 40 Highway in Blue Springs, but you don't even need to know that, except when you go pick up your car. It's when you bang up your car, they're going to ask you, where are we taking this thing? And all you need to know is Dale. Dale's Body Shop in Blue Springs, taking care of customers, taking care of you. So here we are. We're a month out from the presidential election that it seems like we've been talking about forever because we've been talking about it for almost 4 years on this podcast. I used to have the big countdown. Remember that? 1,000 days to go. Yeah. Well, now here we are, man. We're a month out. And it is old news. But we had a vice presidential debate between Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz. Now, going into it, I know you got a lot of clips, and I've only seen it in clips. But here was did you see the debate?
I watched like the first half of it or so, and then I got bored.
Well, then you got a lot more experience at it than I do in terms of that debate. But going into it, my prediction was J.D. Vance would show why Donald Trump picked him. And that, in fact, he has the inside track to the Republican nomination in 2028. He's a man who could walk in on day one and be a credible president of the United States. I thought he would show himself to be that. And I thought Governor Tim Walz would show himself to be the JV of the Democrat Party. Not really sure. It's almost like the old Admiral Stockdale thing. And I know you're too young for this, but when Ross Perot ran for president, his VP pick was an Admiral, James Stockdale. And he was on stage with Vice President Quayle and Senator Al Gore, who was running to be vice president. And the first things out of his mouth were, who am I and why am I up here? And I get that feeling that that's kind of what Tim Walz was going through. We'll see. I mean, you got the clips here.
Yeah, I got some clips.
Go ahead.
And the common consensus seems to be that Vance won the debate. And just watching the first half of it and then watching the clips, I would definitely agree with that. I didn't know much about him and still don't really know that much about him. He wrote that book that I haven't read, but he seemed very composed and very just calm, and he was putting out good points and refuting Tim Walz and the moderators, by the way, which we'll get to here in a minute. But Tim Walz just seems very, I've heard him described as floppy, which I think is pretty funny, but he's just like, he's kind of all over the place. And then he was making weird like faces where you could see that he was visibly uncomfortable because he was being put on the spot a lot. So there was a few moments. This is just my favorite moment because Tim says that he is friends with school shooters.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it's only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those San Diego parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice.
You don't have to assume that was a misspeak, but it's still hilarious. But just how he blows through it. He's like, listen, I'm friends with school shooters. I've been there. It's like, okay.
And I think he said that was a misspeak. And this, again, it's just evidence that, you've got one guy who could be president on day one and you got the JV squad. And, as you roll through these clips, there's one meme that I put up on the podcast page that I think is very telling. It's the one that starts with Barack Obama at the top. It says, I need a VP dumber than me. And then there's an arrow down to a picture of Joe Biden. And then Joe Biden says, I need a VP dumber than me. There's an arrow down to Kamala Harris. And then Kamala Harris says, I need a VP pick dumber than me. Arrow down to the deer in the headlights look that he had in the debate for Tim Walz. And my speculation is, if God forbid someday Tim Walz becomes president of this country, who's the VP that's going to be dumber than him? I mean, is it going to be
there are plenty.
Is it going to be Forrest Gump? Is it going to be Carl from Sling Blade? Mm-hmm.
First of all, how dare you speak about Forrest Gump like that?
Well, Forrest Gump was...
He's not the brightest bulb in the...
Not the brightest bulb, but he always came out on top somehow. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Tom Hanks will be his VP. So continue, please, with Clipapalooza.
Yes.
The experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator,
you respond. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but I just thought that was one of Vance's strongest moments. And Trump has been, as well as Vance, revisiting the topic of tariffs and talking about how we need to tariff all these countries so that we can bring American manufacturing back and things like that. And I just think that was a good point by him.
Well, I mean, I think tariffs are something we need to spend a lot more time talking about, maybe even an entire episode, because I think tariffs in a targeted way in a targeted industry make a lot of sense. But when you start talking about blanket tariffs, I don't think that's a good idea, because it's a tax and it goes right to you and me when we buy something. So where it makes sense to tariff, I think we should have that discussion. But when we talk about blanket tariffing, I'm not for that.
The last clip that I'll play was from the moderators. They did not as bad as the moderators did in the debate with Trump and Harris, but there was a couple moments where they jumped in to counter Vance. And this one in particular, he checked them, which is something that Trump should have done in the last debate and didn't. But Vance did a great job here. In fact, he did so well that they had to mute his mic because he was owning them. Let's check this out.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status temporary protected
Well,
status. Nora?
Margaret, but
Thank you.
Senator, we have so much to get to.
Margaret,
Thank you,
I think it's
Nora.
important
We're
because
going to turn now to the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going
we're-
to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris
Look at his
open
face.
border wand. That is not a person
Tim's
coming in, applying
face.
for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal
And
process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to
One
have,
app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
gentlemen,
They shut his
the
mic
audience
off
can't
Yeah.
hear you because
Yeah.
your mics are cut.
because
Yeah,
he was
and-
schooling them.
Yeah, he was schooling them, and he makes a great point. You know, they use that to say, oh, well, they have legal status. You know, it's okay that we dump 20,000 Haitians into your small
Right.
town in Ohio because they have legal status. Well, all that means is they came here illegally, and then with the wave of an electronic pen, the Biden-Harris administration gave them temporary legal status. It doesn't mean that they applied for legal, you know, immigration the way that people do and wait for years and years and years to
Yeah.
do it. They just waved a pen, and now they can claim that they're legal on a debate stage, which is total BS.
Well, one of the clips that you didn't play was they asked Walz about, the statement he said that he was in China basically during Tiananmen.
Yeah.
And they asked him about it twice. And the end of the clip, when they ask him about it the second time, he's like, well, I just misspoke. And then he's like looking over at Vance like, save me. Did you see that
Yeah.
clip? That was what I took out of it. It was like, I've been caught in a lie here. So, Senator?
Yeah, and it's hilarious too because he did the I'm trying to find the clip right now, but
Yeah.
he did the Kamala thing where like, I grew up in a small town, and
Yeah.
they both did it. I will say that
Well,
JD Vance did it too.
Exactly. Well, Vance's story is out there. I mean, it's been a movie, it's been a book. It was a New York Times bestseller. He was the darling of the liberals. They loved Hillbilly Elegy. And then the guy had the, temerity to run for political office. It's like, oh God, he's a Republican.
Yeah, but nobody cared. That's my thing is like the whole, I grew up in a middle class family. Oh, my, JD Vance was like, I was raised by my grandmom. She had to work 2 jobs. Nobody gives a shit, dude. Like, what are your ideas? What are you
Exactly.
bringing to the country?
You
Maybe, I think what people like, sorry to interrupt you, but I think what people like about Trump is he does the opposite of that. He's like, I'm rich. Look at all my buildings. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a rich, successful man, and here's how I did it, and here's what I can do for the country.
Well, there's
you
a
know what I mean?
debate tip, that when they coach you on how to debate, it's like, don't answer the question they ask, answer the question you want to answer.
Right.
So you figure if you get into that whole biographical narrative, somewhere the question will get lost in there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so here's the clip of them asking Walz about his China.
I want you to see, because
visit.
this is why you should watch our video, because we do post these clips. But I want you to watch the eyes of Tim Walz after the second time the moderators tried to get him to answer the question.
This is about 2.5 minutes long, so we'll watch the whole thing.
Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989.
He's like, oh shit.
Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in a small middle class family. That's what he's going to say. Watch.
Well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17.
That's service?
Worked on family farms.
Yeah.
And then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher.
Like, what does that mean? He's like, you're asked about why you lied about when you were in China, and his answer is basically, well, I'm just a dope. I'm just some hillbilly dope from a small town. Whoops.
Had a passion to be a teacher. That's why I got a DUI when I was coaching. Hello.
All right.
First year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. They Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right.
Look at Vance's look. It's
more
like,
than anything.
Stooge.
Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you?
You didn't answer the question.
The discrepancy.
All I said on this was
Watch
I
the
got
eyes.
there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protest went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Help.
So painful.
By
painful.
the way, this is kind of a curveball here, but did you know that you can bet on the election?
Yeah.
Betting on the 2024 election will be allowed. Federal Appeals Court made the ruling going against the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Government agency had argued that allowing betting could undermine election integrity. Can you imagine if Donald Trump said, put $1 billion on Kamala Harris and then threw the election?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a terrible idea. I've talked to some friends about this, and this is just a random headline I pulled up from CNN, but terrible idea. I mean, betting on sports is one thing, you know, I can see arguments on both sides of that, but betting on elections, man, what a mess. What a mess.
Well, we'll see how that turns out.
Yep.
What is a good idea is if you are 45 or older is to get screened for colon cancer. Dr. Mark Taramina and his company, Midwest GI Health and Wellness, one-stop shopping to get that done. They can do the upper GI while they're in there as well. But that lower GI, that basically determines if you've got the polyps that could lead to colon cancer. And you catch those early and you live. It festers and you don't get in there and you don't see that, it will kill you. So this is a life and death decision of getting your colonoscopy. I've had one, and now I'm going to have my next one. In fact, Mark Taramina and Midwest GI Health and Wellness is going to do my second colonoscopy, and it will be on October the 28th, which is why we're having a listener appreciation show at Funhouse Pizza on October 29th.
And not October 27th.
No, definitely not. In fact, they called me. I was on my way to Indiana for the weekend trip, and they said, hey, we had an opening on Monday. You want to do it? And I'm like, no. Because I'm going to be, traveling this weekend, and then we have a Monday night football game. There's no way that I can do the prep work required to have that colonoscopy done. But you should schedule it and get it done. They're 4.9 out of 5 stars on Google. That's the highest rating in Kansas City. Just fantastic people. We love having them here because, who knows how many lives we've saved by talking about this on Dale Carter's America.
Tremendous people.
Then when you get that lease on life, you want to get rid of that lease. Buy your own home. It's a great feeling. It's part of the American dream. And rates are starting to come down. This could be a fantastic time to transition from apartment dwelling to your very first home. And then that just sets you up. Then you're in that home for a while. You trade up. You get a bigger family. You get a bigger home. Kids go off to college. Then you get a smaller home. Maybe you've come into some money in your life and you've found a piece of property you love and you want to have a dream home. Any stage of life you're in, relates to real estate, and Michael Schroer is our real estate pro at RE/MAX Heritage. Get him involved here. He's been around for 35 years of residential and commercial construction experience. He's been working with folks in both Kansas and Missouri, finding them the home of their dreams and, selling your home. You got to do that at some point, too. 816-783-5800. If you're looking to buy or sell or build, he's your guy. Michael Schroer, real estate pro at RE/MAX Heritage. When Jimmy Carter was president, and he just had his 100th birthday last week.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing for a guy who's been in hospice for almost 2 years. His wife has died. He has brain cancer. And while I think, looking back on the policies, not the person, the policies, they were a disaster for this country. As a person, Jimmy Carter there couldn't be a better person. When he left the White House, what did he do? He went around building things, building houses, really giving back. He certainly didn't go the speech route where, he made millions of dollars on the speech circuit. He gave back to his community and to his home. But when he was president, I'll never forget the address he made from the White House, and he said, "We have a crisis of confidence in this country." And we did back then until Ronald Reagan came in and it became Morning in America. We had a crisis of confidence. I would say now, the argument that I would make now against a second Joe Biden term in the person of Kamala Harris is we have a crisis of competence in this country. Competence. The federal response to Hurricane Helene is just the first of those, and that's where we'll start. And you see the Facebook headlines. People are tuned into this. They understand. They say, no money for North Carolina, plenty of money for Ukraine. You've seen the meme on Facebook maybe with North Carolina relabeled as Ukraine. I think Kurt's going to put that up for you. Maybe that might get their attention. And now, all the money that's been diverted to illegals that are coming into the country, because if you're going to let in millions and millions of illegals, there's a cost for that. And yet we've got Americans here that are suffering through Helene, and there's another hurricane that's taking aim at Florida, and it looks like it's going to be a big one too. And it's aimed right at the center of the peninsula. So we'll pray for those folks. But that's kind of how I look at this, Kurt. It's crisis of competence. They just can't get it done.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, government tends to be very ineffective and, cumbersome. You look at, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but the Kamala Harris-led plan to provide high-speed internet across the country has cost billions of dollars, and they have not provided one person with internet. Or the plan to install the electric EV charging stations across the country has not panned out. And the same thing goes for FEMA, which is just not effective. It's not providing aid for people. And with this storm in particular, there's been a lot of really troubling things where people are saying that not only is FEMA not doing what they should be, but they're actively preventing people from helping, preventing the locals from helping. You have people that are in there with helicopters, private citizens trying to fly to inaccessible locations, trying to donate money to private charities, and FEMA is coming in and saying, you can't donate that money. We need that money so that they can put it through their bureaucracy and then, put it out to whatever channels they see fit. There's people out there saying that they're not driving to any roads that are deemed inaccessible. So, isn't that your job? How are people going to get aid? You're just sitting in a parking lot with a FEMA truck, and people need to sign online and open the app or something like that and register on the app and then come to your location where the truck is in order to get their bag of rice or whatever the heck. How are they going to do that if they don't have transportation, they don't have power, they don't have internet? It's ridiculous. And there's lots of videos that I could play, but this is one that stood out that I did want to play. My mouse is acting up. Okay, here we go. And see what you think about this.
Are they still not there anywhere? What are you seeing from FEMA in the federal response, if any?
I mean, they're present. They're in the way. They are directly interrupting our ability to conduct missions and operations. And I'm not going to disparage anybody because we are trying to work within partner relationships, both government and non-government entities within state and federal and county. I went to put a couple of people into a hotel last night, and they have a security guard at the hotel. And they said, "Oh, we're so sorry. The entire hotel has been booked for federal employees." And I was like, no, I have people that would just pull it out of a mountain that are living out in the hills, and there's not a place for me to put them because we have federal employees that are staying in the hotel. I slept in this white car last night. I smell like foot and death right now, as does every single person on our team. Not a single one of us slept. We got done maybe at 3 o'clock. The moment the sun was up and we could fly helicopters again, we were back in the air, and we have not stopped. And I was like on the fence about trying to get on this program or not. I want people to understand how incredible this organization is, Save Our Allies, and all the work that all of these volunteers are doing. But people, this is biblical level devastation. This is apocalyptic, the things that we see out there.
These are towns up in the mountains that are 10, 20, 40 miles away from any other town. And people on the ground like you need helicopters from the government, and they will not release them. I have heard that time and again. And the people who are delivering aid up in the mountains are now getting requests for body bags. Tim, we got to
you are 100% correct. Oh, you're right about that. And there was a no-fly when the president flew in today. We had to land helicopters to not go rescue people so a photo op could take place. And that's a travesty, and that's unconscionable.
If people want to donate, is it saveourallies.com?
That's right. And if somebody is stuck somewhere, or you know somebody that's stuck, you can go to saveourallies.org, and you can click on there. Let us know. We have people going all over in the places that can't be reached. That's why we have special operations people working with partnerships to get into those areas. So go there, support that organization, and also let us know where to go.
Tim Kennedy, you are a great American.
Just the latest example of incompetence on the part of our government, and the military response, which is also, that comes from the White House and the Pentagon. That was slow in the wake of this hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, Kamala's doing the same thing. She's out there, campaigning, essentially. She's doing photo ops. They set up the little podium. They set up some cameras and some microphones. And here she is saying that people get $750, for immediate aid. So that's what you get. Your house gets washed away. FEMA has a camp set up. They're not going to come to you. They're not going to provide you with anything, but you can have $750 if you fill out this form online through the app with no internet and no power.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met.
Yeah, and there was pushback on that from the other side that is just one element of relief that's going on there. But I saw a meme that I thought was really funny. Kamala was wearing, I guess, a designer belt, which somebody circled, and apparently the belt is worth more than the $750 they were giving out to people who had lost everything. I mean, that's very telling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but there's a lot going on here, and why. You mentioned the incompetence and all of that, which is true. And you have the bureaucracy of FEMA and the federal government. You have to the money goes through all these channels. It goes through the bureaucracy, and then they try and filter it down to the people who actually need it, which is never going to work in a situation like this. But more than that, you hear firsthand accounts of people saying they're turning us away. They're turning us away at the hotels. They have federal employees booked. We're not getting any help. Yeah. They're not going on these back roads. It's like, it seems almost like on purpose. Like, why? Why are they doing this? Why are they turning these people away? Is it election related? North Carolina is a swing state. You know what I mean? Is it so that people don't go vote? Is it because they're white and Republican? I just pulled this up on a quick Google search. FEMA has this whole equity program, FEMA's 2022 through 2026 strategic plan. Ambitious goals are to instill equity as a foundation of emergency management. So they're prioritizing quote unquote underserved communities for emergency response. You can look through this whole thing. It's all public information. So, there's a lot there, and I don't want to speculate too much, but I'm curious your thoughts of it too.
Well, just go to it and read it, and you can see exactly. DEI is what this administration is all about, all the way down to the person running for president right now, a DEI pick who could not get 1% of the vote in her own party. And now she's the nominee for president. And if she wins, she could go down in history as the first DEI president. But competence is what we're talking about in this segment. And there are other things out there that are going on. The dock workers strike. Now, we dodged a bullet there, but the Biden administration failed to step in. Now, the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, was asking the administration to invoke the Taft-Hartley Act to get an 80-day cooling off period. Because, again, in the wake of one hurricane, now another one coming across Florida, that 80-day cooling off period, if it had been invoked, would have allowed things to flow. And I saw online somewhere that Kamala Harris was saying, hey, we support the dock workers, we support the union workers, and they were yelling back, we don't support you. So even they get the incompetence that's going on here. Now, while the strike appears to be over for now, this could have been, and again, the White House said, we are not going to get involved. This could have been a $5 billion a day hit to our economy. And the Biden administration wanted no part in helping. Now, it reminded me of when Teddy Roosevelt was president. Historically, you can read the accounts of all this, but there was a coal strike in this country in one of the most severe winters that we ever had. And Teddy Roosevelt got involved. He brought in the striking workers. He brought in the owners of the coal mines, and he said, I represent the people of the United States, and I want this ended. That was Teddy Roosevelt. That's when we talk about, the bully pulpit, because he was that guy who invented the bully pulpit as far as being president. There is no bully pulpit now. There's a beach chair with an umbrella and an old guy who's sitting there listening to the waves. There's nobody at home at the White House right now. And if you think it's going to get better, the competence with Kamala Harris, I don't know. She says she's got a day one strategy. Really? I think Trump is doing an excellent job here, and Vance is doing an excellent job here. Where has she been the last 3.5 years? You don't need a day one strategy. Where is she today? Where is she for the next month? What about that period between Election Day and January 20th? You can get a lot of things done right now. And then Biden, she's like trying to separate herself from Biden. She's trying to create the best trick since Harry Houdini was around. And that is, I'm part of the administration, but I'm running against it.
Right.
And in fact, if I could hypnotize you for a second, I want you to believe that Donald Trump is still president. Donald Trump is still president because everything that's happening is his fault. So then Joe Biden goes into the briefing room where he never goes, right?
Is this his first one ever?
I don't know if it's first one ever, but it's certainly very, very rare.
Yeah.
And, he got a question and he answered the question and he probably told the truth here. But Kamala Harris is probably somewhere throwing darts at a picture of him.
The beginning of this clip is very funny, too, because he's just getting shouted at and he's like so overwhelmed.
Go ahead. Nandita, sir. No, sir. I didn't call on you, sir. I didn't call on you. Nandita, thank you. Nandita, go.
There have obviously been a number of crises that the country has been facing over the past several days with the hurricane, with the port strike, with the situation in the Middle East. Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass. And so she's been, and her staff is interlocked with mine in terms of all the things we're doing.
Boy, you think Kamala Harris really wanted that out there?
No.
Definitely not. And then, as we continue on the crisis of competence, we have the latest word salad. This is new, just came out this week from Kamala Harris answering a question.
Yeah, I got another one too. There's two good ones this week. Let's check out this one first.
During the course of being vice president, have many situations where it becomes clear to me that there are, people of every age and gender, by the way, who see something about being the first that lets them know they don't need to be limited by other people's limited understanding of who can do what.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? No, we don't understand. We have no idea.
We have no idea what the heck she's saying.
We use a clip from that movie in one of our interstitials, too.
Okay. What else you got?
So this is another one. She was asked about Israel and in an interview. She has been doing some more interviews. Of course, they're highly scripted. They edit everything out, but it's still not really helping her.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems...
Yeah. Don't judge her, by her actions or anything. You got to judge her by the fact that she's a woman of color.
I'm just going to mute it for a second and talk over it because you could just see how uncomfortable she is.
It's straining.
Yeah.
Right.
She's like on the spot here, and she's trying to just say words. It's just like, say words. Just get through it. You know what I mean?
And you can't imagine Trump doing that at all. I mean, Trump's just going to shoot from the hip. Is he going to step in it a time or two? He probably is. But you're going to get exactly what he thinks about a given subject. And you can almost see the calculations going in her head. Man, if I say this, what's that going to mean?
Right.
What's that going to mean? And then, like you said, she's just filling in with words. And then a longtime friend of the program, longtime friend of mine, Chris DeGaulle, who has a talk show and a podcast and all that, he posted something, and I thought, man, that is right on the money. I want you to read the bullet points that Chris DeGaulle put up, and then I'll take it from there.
Sure. Ports are closed. Hundreds of Americans missing in a natural disaster. FEMA says they're out of money because they spent it all on illegals. ICE says there are over 600,000 mid-high-level criminals in our midst awaiting deportation. War breaking out in the Middle East. Emergency oil reserves depleted. Kamala Harris wants a promotion.
Okay, so my friend Steve back in Indiana, who is a Democrat, he's one of the comments on here, and I call him one of our keyboard warriors because he says, "You're just spreading lies, Dale, just spreading lies." And so I said, what lie am I spreading? Right? And he says something about, oil production, it's the highest level, blah, 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 blah. And then I corrected him and I said, he's not talking about oil production levels, in the wake of more regulations from the federal government. He's talking about the strategic reserve, which Joe Biden depleted to try and artificially bring down gas prices to win more votes. And I don't think Steve replied. A bunch of people jumped on him because where's the lie?
Yeah.
Spreading lies infers that what Stegall put out is full of lies. And those are all provable facts.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Including the last one, that Kamala Harris wants a promotion. I'm kind of hoping that doesn't happen. We'll know in about a month. And the week before that, we're going to have a big party. And maybe we'll put squares up. I mean, since it's legal to vote, maybe we'll put squares up and let people, buy squares like you would like a big football game. What do you think?
Yeah.
It's legal. Why the heck not? Okay. What's the status of your roof? That's an important question, especially after all the storms that we've had here in the Midwest, not to mention what's gone through the Southeast and what's going to continue to happen down in Florida. You need your roof inspected. Get that inspection done by my friends at Royal Roofing and Solar, 816-540-7057. They're also experts in solar with questions that you should answer before you move forward with solar. Solar's not for everyone. Are you keeping that house a long time? Does it face the right way? What kind of system do you need? Don't go out there with some shyster who's going to say, oh, yeah, solar, that's fine. We'll put it on the north side of the house. Guess what? That doesn't work. What, you got a big tree shading your house? We can put solar on it. It's not a problem. That's a problem. Mike Dale is the solar expert. So solarbyroyal.com, royalcontractingkc.com. Honest brokers, and you need both in the roofing and the solar business. And Austin Watterson and his company, fantastic people. 816-540-7057. Then something I am painfully aware of is I'm getting closer to 65. 4 years to go for that for me. How about you? Are you closing in on 65? Do you have a relative who is closing in on 65? Are you one of our younger listeners, viewers? Maybe it's one of your parents who's closing in on 65. Medicare rules are changing. Blue Cross of Kansas City, for example, will no longer offer Medicare Advantage plans in 2025. So if you're enrolled in a Blue Advantage plan this year, you got to find another plan for 2025. What plan is that going to be? Run the traps with my friends Kirk Doris and Lori Hawker at MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. These are turbulent times, and if you're on or will soon be approaching Medicare, you got to be dialed in on how these changes will impact you. They'll sit down with you. The meeting is free, and they'll come to you if you can't come to them. They're at 3600 South Nolan Road, Suite F in Independence. On the phone again at 816-701-6661 and on the web at MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. So we talked a lot about the crisis of competence because the current administration, even though they don't want you to really know this, is the Biden-Harris administration. Has been for the last nearly 4 years. The 4 years before that, Donald Trump was president of the United States, and he'd like to be president again. Now, there's a school of thought, and I don't know if I believe this or not, maybe you do, Kurt, that if Biden had done a competent job and everything was going swimmingly, that he might not have run in 2024. Do you buy that?
No, I don't buy that for a second.
Well, some people do. He did have a meeting while the UN was going on in New York with Zelensky. Says he has a plan to bring the Russia-Ukraine war to an end. And I thought that would be a great time to review foreign policy under Donald Trump.
Wait, are you saying that you're saying if Biden did a good job that Trump wouldn't have run or Biden?
Trump wouldn't have run.
Oh, gotcha. I thought you were talking about Biden. Trump, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, maybe he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
I thought you meant Biden. I was like, hell no.
I mean, there are a lot of Democrats out there who say, no, his ego is fueling this, and that's why he was going to run regardless. But if you take him at his word, he would even say that, if the country had gone okay under Joe Biden, but it's crisis after crisis after crisis.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at it from his perspective, why would you run? Just personally, I mean, he's like the most hated man in America now. He's constantly attacked. He's been physically attacked. He's been shot. They're trying to throw him in jail. They're throwing the book at him in 3 different states and at the federal level. Why would you want to subject yourself to that unless you felt like you really had to? So,
and if you felt like you were right for the country at this moment in time, otherwise it would be, I'll just go cry on my sacks of money, big semi-trucks full of money, in fact. I'll be at my resort in Florida with my hot wife.
Yeah.
But he's going to run for president. So think about foreign policy when Donald Trump was president. You had no war in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin was in the Kremlin in Moscow. He wasn't going to attack anybody. You had relative peace in the Middle East, and I say relative because it's been a tough putt for anybody to get peace there. Yet countries who were at war with Israel, death to Israel, signed on to work with Israel in the Abraham Accords. Iran was back in its hole, and now we've got the world exploding with Joe Biden and his policies. What policies led to which? I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast. Our disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Don't forget that, because against the advice of his generals, he just decided on a day that we're going to leave. And it was utter chaos, and 13 service members lost their lives at Abbey Gate. Chaos, right? What's happening in the Middle East? You go back to the Iran nuclear deal. Terrible deal that Barack Obama got in bed with the Iranians. Oh, yeah, just keep giving us money, and we won't build a nuclear bomb. Fingers crossed behind our backs on that. Trump came in and he said, that's a terrible deal. Terrible deal. And by the way, we're not only going to get out of this deal, but if you folks in Iran, if you launch a massive strike, we're going to take that as an attack on the United States, and we will level your country. Didn't hear from him during that whole time, right?
Yeah.
And then Biden goes, oh, that was terrible to get out of the deal. Terrible to get out of the deal. We're getting right back into the deal. So we get back into the deal with him. It's like, well, we're giving you all this money, but you're going to use it for humanitarian purposes. Sure they did. They gave it to Hamas. They've given it to Hezbollah. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that Iran is the one fueling those 2 terrorist organizations who are attacking Israel. And really, there's no doubt at all when you see the missiles flying from Iran into Israel. Gigs up then, you can't even hide it anymore. And if we get 4 years of Kamala Harris, God knows what's going to happen in the Middle East. Trump talks about it. It may well be World War III.
It's definitely possible. I mean, things are escalating continuously, so we'll see.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump returned over the weekend to Butler, Pennsylvania. The triumphant return. I understand they have a statue to Trump already on that property. Have you seen that?
No, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And before you get to the clips of this, I think it's also important to point out that the Pennsylvania State Secretary of State's office set up this day as a day to test their systems. So you weren't allowed to register to vote in Pennsylvania. They did a blackout period during this. The Trump campaign complained mightily about it, so they adjusted the hours, I think, to 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. But if you came out of that rally thinking, this is my guy. Now, I know a lot of people have already made this decision. There's probably 100,000 people in 6 states who are going to decide this election. But if you came out of this and you were moved, and it's like, I'm going to go register because I'm going to vote for Trump, you couldn't do it because they were testing their system.
Yeah, and people say that it's not rigged. There's no evidence. There's no evidence that the elections are rigged. How could you not trust our sacred democracy? Come on, give me a break. I mean, this stuff happens all the time, and it's obviously deliberate. And we didn't even talk about this. There was another story out of Arizona last week where there was there's 200,000 people on the voter rolls in Arizona illegally, but because technically it's past the time that you're able to take people off of the voter rolls, the state acknowledged it. The state acknowledged that 200,000 people are registered to vote in Arizona that should not be, that are illegally registered to vote, but they're not going to do anything about it until after the election. They've already, dismissed that completely. So, tell me it's not rigged. Tell me that there's not funny business going on. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I understand there was a huge crowd.
Yeah. So there's a couple things here. Trump flew his plane over too. That's a separate thing. But it's similar, just showing the crowd size. Lots of people. A lot of people.
Look at that. 60,000 was the estimate I saw.
Yep. That's almost Arrowhead Stadium.
Almost. Wearing red, too. Could be Chiefs fans.
Yeah. And then let's see what else we have here. There's a few more things.
Sloped roof.
Yeah. So remember we talked about the Secret Service director saying that the roof was sloped and that's why they couldn't put people on the roof. Remember talking about that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So here is...
That's the roof the guy shot him from.
That's the roof.
So who's on top of it now?
Well, it is still a sloped roof. I don't think they made the roof less sloped, but there's snipers up there. So I guess it's not a problem anymore.
I wonder if that woman ever got a job. How do you get a job out of that? Well, sloped roof, we couldn't put people up there.
I hope she's a Walmart greeter now.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course, but and then this is how he started his speech. This was fantastic, and he was kind of talking up that this is how he was going to start his speech, but here's a clip of that, short clip.
Lee, thank you very much, really, and thank you, a very big thank you to Pennsylvania. We love Pennsylvania, and as I was saying...
And then he pulls up the chart. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. That's really powerful stuff, man.
Bulletproof glass in front of him. I listened to it on the radio. I didn't see it on television, so that's interesting. They put the bulletproof glass up there.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, because there's other clips where he's like standing out to the side, clearly not behind the bulletproof glass. So, I mean, I don't know if it just protects him from the front, I guess. I don't know. But we're not going to watch this whole clip, just the intro. But there was a few guest appearances there. There was Scott Pressler, who's been out there doing a lot of activism, getting people registered to vote and things like that. Scott Lebedo, I think is how his name is pronounced. He did a painting of Corey Comparator, the firefighter that lost his life. They had a whole tribute to him with some singing and a moment of silence and stuff like that. His family was there. And probably the biggest guest appearance at this particular event was Elon Musk, who has come out as a big Trump supporter. He interviewed him on X, and he's been supporting him in the last couple months. So he made an appearance. as well, and gave a little bit of speech. But this is just the intro for Elon, because I thought this was pretty cool.
He's a great gentleman. He's done such an unbelievable job for North Carolina, for Georgia, for Alabama, for Florida, for Tennessee. His name is Elon Musk. He saved free speech. He created so many different great things. Where is he? Come on up here, Elon. He created the first major American car company in generations, and his rocket company is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space.
There he is.
Take over, Elon. Just take over.
Hi, everyone.
Elon's like so
blown away,
like autistic, like socially awkward. You know, it's hilarious. But that speech is like 6 minutes long, so we're not.
So we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I wanted to say a couple of other things. Democrats are not giving up on lawfare. Jack Smith has refiled on Trump's alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election because all they want you to see, Kurt, all they want you to see is January 6th. Because again, that's all they've got. If you drill down and you see these speeches that Kamala Harris makes or Tim Walz makes or the incompetence of the Biden administration, that's all you're seeing these days. And speaking of January 6th, I want to leave you with this in this segment. Gordon Sondland, you remember that name? He was a witness for the prosecution of Trump in the January 6th hearings. He was on MSNBC, and he caught them by complete surprise. And when you see the reaction of the anchor on MSNBC, again, let me reset this for you. This guy was a witness for the prosecution against Donald Trump. He's an ambassador, and he flipped sides, and it completely shocked them. But he's saying the quiet part out loud, and honest Democrats will agree with him.
Here we go on that. Lots of button pressing, sorry.
I've now lived 4 years under the Biden-Harris policies, and I have to say that those policies are not only becoming an existential threat to our country's way of life, but to our allies as well.
So when you
and
Ambassador, this is, I'll let you finish, but this is so striking. You said it was a no for me after that, after January 6th.
I did.
And here we are right now.
I did.
And you're saying it's a yes for you.
It is a yes for me.
That guy's incredulous. He's like, "You've got to be kidding me! How did we let you on this network?"
Yeah.
But he's being honest, right?
Yeah.
And if Democrats are honest and they look at all this stuff, they're going to come to the same conclusion. And we talk about the policies. And I'll tell you, when you talk about policies, you're talking about insurance policies. You got to be insured against everything. Your auto, your home, your life, your business, your pets, your health, all the keys to all of that. One name you need to know, and that's my friend Bob Watson. He's been a State Farm agent for 50 years from his location at 7th and Main in Blue Springs. I've been a lifelong State Farm customer, and for the last 30 years, Bob Watson has been my guy. We've been through a lot together. We've been through the kids getting their driver's licenses, maybe the head of the household with a heavy foot, getting into an accident or two. 7th and Main in Blue Springs, that's the guy who's taken care of me and my family for 30 years, and he'll take care of you as well. He's licensed in both Missouri and Kansas. He's a great guy, and I don't know that his schedule is going to allow him to be there at Funhouse Pizza on October 29th, but I sure hope he is. I want all of our sponsors to gather there so that I can point him out. You know, when we're live, it's like, hey, you need a house? You go talk to that guy. You turn in 65? You go talk to that guy. You haven't had your colonoscopy yet? You go talk to that guy. We're going to point them all out and send you to the right people who can help you in whatever stage in life you are. And in whatever stage in life you're in, you're going to need insurance, and Bob Watson is the guy.
Can I just say something about that too real quick? I've realized as I'm getting older and doing more like adult stuff, like having a guy for things is so important. Like
Really
having a realtor guy, having an insurance guy, having a healthcare, a doctor, a guy, having a barber, anything like that. You need a guy for everything. And it's not just somebody that that you find on Google or whatever. It tends to be somebody that you have a personal recommendation for, personally, you're friends with, or a friend of a friend, and you build those networks. And that just becomes really, I'm just realizing that in my own personal life, how important that is. So
the only place I disagree with you is I have a girl that cuts my hair in sports clips. So I got a gal for that.
Yeah,
doesn't always have to be a guy for that.
That's true.
All right.
That's true.
Speaking of gals, we want to leave you with this. I call it the stripper analogy. And we put this up on the podcast page at Dale Carter's America. And basically, if you're just doing audio only, you're not seeing this, but you could see it on Facebook. It says, idolizing a politician is like believing the stripper really likes you. And of course, some of the replies I got from my friend Chad Taylor, he's like, what? She doesn't really like me? You got to be kidding me. No. So don't idealize a politician. And we have fallen into that trap with several politicians. I'll go back to Barack Obama. I mean, my God, he was going to be the second coming. He got a Nobel Peace Prize before he did anything. They just gave it to him. What? America's elected a black president? Well, we must give him the Nobel Peace Prize. And there are people who are doing that with Kamala Harris as well. She's the first woman of color. You know, she could definitely break through that black ceiling. There's a Freudian slip. Break through that glass ceiling, if you will. But it would also be a woman of color and all that. And we do it on our side as well, Kurt. Some people. I don't think I do. I don't think you do. But there are people out there who are idolizing Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Don't do that. It's the policies. It's what my 85-year-old aunt from Pennsylvania, who is going to vote for Donald Trump, will tell you. Again, I'll review what she said to me. Over her lifetime, she has voted for some people that she might not have liked, might not have wanted to sit down and have breakfast with. It comes down to the policies. These people are not going to come to your house. You're not going to go to lunch with them. You're not going to have a beer with them. At the end of the day, it's how does it affect your life? So stop idolizing these people. Figure out which policies are best for you. Figure out which candidate can run this country at a competent level, and then vote. And you got a month. And then we're going to review the results. And as I said last time, looking back in history, I've been able to make some sense out of every election, whether a Republican or a Democrat won. It's like, yeah, I kind of get where the electorate was. If she wins, I don't think I'm going to be able to have that conversation with you. So I'm going to bet on Donald Trump because legally I can.
Amazing.
I got $20 on Donald Trump. Until next week, as we get closer to the big party at Funhouse Pizza and closer still to Election Day 2024, this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to DaleCartersAmerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.